I guess good afternoon. My name is Sue Abbott. I'm the Director of Grant Programs from Arts Westchester. Happy to be here. Thank you. My background is in tech theater and stage managing. I used to tour once upon a time and actually did 2 shows that came through the Pesky Theater, so it's always nice to circle back. I did stage managing for a while and then got my MFA from Brooklyn College in arts admin. And I've been at Arts Westchester now about 4.5 years. We do grants, advocacy, professional development, and have a rotating exhibition in our gallery. And Lauren and I oversee the grant programs, which is roughly $1.1 million in grant funding out to artists and organizations all over Westchester and Rockland County, as well as have a hand in the government relations, which is to ask the nice elected officials for the money to then grant it out to all the groups and the artists.
So I'm Lauren Brady. I'm the Program Associate at Arts Westchester. I've been there for about 3.5 years now. I graduated with my bachelor's in arts management and art history in 2016, so not too far from where you guys are now. But yes, I've been there. I work with Sue in the grants department. So we'll go fast. But so we do a few different grants throughout the year. Some of them are more localized. We focus in Yonkers and Mount Vernon, specifically for 2 of our grant programs. So we fund artists and arts organizations specifically in those 2 towns. We also have a matching grant called the Challenge, and that's funding that we get from Westchester County that we then re-grant back out to eligible organizations. We can match up to $5,000 of new money that they get or increase donors throughout this period of time.
And when we have an intern, the intern might do anything from read a grant to research a panelist to come with us to go see something that was funded to join us at the table talking to a legislator about arts funding and all kinds of other things in between. So happy to meet you guys.
Let's see who is here at Purchase in the history.
Yes, hello everyone. It's great to see so many panelists and so many students here. And I'm here to wear the hat of history museums, which is actually one of the things that I've done in my past. Currently here at Purchase, I'm a professor of history. I do the early stuff in early American terms, so from the bubonic plague to the Civil War, roughly. And I'm also chair of the program, which means I'm here a lot. I will not be having a table today, but it does mean that if you want to have a chat with me about careers in history, museums specifically, which are what I know, you're welcome to come and visit me and ask me some questions. I'm always happy to interact on that level. And that's why I'm also here. I was one of the originators, along with my colleagues in art history and in arts management, of a new museum studies minor here at Purchase, which is in the process of being rolled out, which is very exciting and very uniquely Purchase. The reason I got involved was because while I was working on my PhD, I had a brief time of working in these history museums. And I found through speaking to colleagues in academic history that there was a real disconnect between what was known about history museums and then how they actually came together. My colleagues in history are brilliant in other subjects. I'm not talking about my colleagues here, by the way. I'm talking about colleagues in my field. But many of them thought that history museums were created by little elves who worked beyond the walls of a museum to reinterpret the material and put it up at night and make sure everything looked kind of fresh and new. No, in actuality, many large-scale history museums, museums that are distinct from art museums and science museums and things of that nature. Think the National D-Day Museum down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Think the new history of the Civil War at Gettysburg, or the one of the American Revolution in Philadelphia, are the result of multi-year and multi-million-dollar contracts that go out to companies that do nothing else but design museums. And I had the pleasure of working for one of these firms while I was in graduate school. It came about in a kind of funny way. I was a grant writer at the time. It was right after Christmas, and I had a huge stack of Christmas bills and knew that I got kind of blue during the winter, so I'm like, what can I do? And I found this part-time job at this museum exhibit firm because I was also in graduate school for history. And that was great because they employ historians. to look at the materials that a museum has that they want to interpret, to write up, to develop a schematic plan about how to best interpret that history, to devise what the historical periods are, which are going to determine what the rooms are and how the materials are going to be presented and interpreted, to work with a team that includes lighting designers and architects and stage designers that will actually create immersive environments, to work with ADA consultants to make sure that everybody finds a space that is accessible to them on multiple levels. That's what happens at firms like this. The downside was that it didn't pay terribly well. I didn't make a whole lot of money working for this firm, even though I was happy for every penny I got. But in my particular case, there was a bright side. I happened to be employed by a man who I married 4 years later. So that was a really good, low-paying job for me. And also, as you rise up the ranks, the jobs get higher paid. In addition, federal agencies, government agencies, hire historians to interpret historical material that belongs to the federal government. And the man who I happened to marry, who was working for one of these firms, later went on to a federal museum, and that's where he works today, continuously interpreting the history, my apologies, making design choices and design decisions about how that history is going to be presented to the public. Well, I'm here and I work on books. My joke about us is I spent 5 years writing a book, and 8 people read it, and 4 of them have the last name of Shimoleski. He does an exhibit, and 1 million people might see that over the lifetime of the exhibit. So it's a wonderful opportunity for somebody who's interested in history to really be impactful in their work. I just wanted to throw out the example of these history museums and how they're created. I want to reiterate my welcome to everyone, and anybody who would like to talk to me further, please come and see me during my office hours.
Hi everybody, I'm Jonah Westerman. I'm our district professor here. It's great to follow Dr. Chmielewski because I'm here talking about art museums specifically rather than history museums. And weirdly, I'm here not actually representing career museums, but sort of a track that we have developed within our master's program. So for those, and I see some of you who are in it now. Nice to see you. For those of you who are in your undergrad now, if you want to do more school as a way to get into working in art museums, it's actually something that you should think about, especially if you want to be involved in the sort of interpreting side, whether that's education or curating in art museums of lots of different kinds. I have a PhD. I spent a little while working at Tate Modern a few years ago, but now I'm a professor. You can kind of do both with a PhD. You don't need a PhD to just work in a museum, although certainly a master's helps. Anyway, I'm rambling. I brought some of these brochures for the master's program. The M+ program, which was developed in the master's program. The M+ is for museum and curatorial studies. So it's a 2-year track within our master's program that is both a theoretical, critical, and historical foundation with 2 courses, one that's called museology. Some of you in this room are in that right now. And you get to know the Neuberger Museum really well, you get to know the history of museums really well, different kinds of things that museums do, and the different kinds of jobs that exist in a museum. The second class you would take is focused more narrowly on the role of the curator in particular, and how that's changed since the 60s or so. And it's also a little bit of an exhibition history. So it's all the work that goes into putting an exhibition together, what it means to be a curator, if that's something you're interested in. And then the second year of this 2-year track is an exhibition practicum. And you'll hear from some other people in this room who are involved with that other side of M+, over at the Neuberger Museum. But what it is, people in the second year of the track work together as a curatorial collective, and all of you will start seeing some of the products of that class, of that practicum right now, as things go up on display in the spring. You work with a single object from the Neuberger's collection, and as a collective, you imagine as many ways as you can of putting that on display and building programming around it to involve the rest of the museum's collection, as well as the rest of campus, right? So that means students, that means other faculty, that means other departments, to sort of activate that object and tell different stories about it and think about how you bring art together with people and all the different ways that that happens. So yeah, if you want more school, then you maybe want the M+ program. We have some of these brochures, and one of our current students, Caroline Riley, not here right now, will be at the table when we're done in here, and you can talk to her about that. And of course, email me or come to office hours. I'm in the humanities building with everybody else who's in the humanities. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
So now we have Alex Catrone, sorry, who is with Curator Center.
Hi there, I'm Alex Catrone. I'm with Curator Center for Music and the Arts. I'm the Director of Visitor Services up there. So Caramoor is a 80-ish acre estate up in Katona. It is a classical music venue that has started dabbling into other types of music, similar programming to what's here at the Performing Arts Center, actually. About 60% classical, some folk, some jazz, some Broadway. We also are home to a 25,000 square foot historic home that has a museum level collection of Renaissance and Chinese art inside, as well as one of the world's first permanent collections of sound art, which is visual art that makes noise, or non-visual art that is noise, or it's a pretty broad definition that I'm trying to sink my teeth into. Visitor services up at Caramoor is really just everything that the public is going to interact with. So the box office and ticketing, the ushers, the merchandise, the concessions, and a lot of customer service. A lot of really making sure that people who are able to be interested in classical music or sound art and are willing to drive to Katona and are willing to drive through the woods where the GPS doesn't work and find their way onto our driveway aren't any more stressed once they get there. So really taking care of people. That's the job. My background is a BA in music from Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and then about 2 weeks of driving through Westchester County with copies of my resume, handing them out to every arts organization I could find. I wound up working at a theater in White Plains for a little bit, and then making my way up to Caramoor, where I've been for about 5 years, and plan on being as long as they'll have me. So please come talk to me. I have a background in performance, but not enough talent to be a performer. And I didn't really want to go that route anyway, so I really honed in on finding a way to be around the arts and around music and not needing to be on stage in front of people. So, thank you.
Hello, everybody. As you can see, I'm the Deputy Director for Advancement, Communications, and Administration at the Museum, which is a large umbrella that really means that I oversee all fundraising activities and also working closely with our curatorial department on all of the exhibitions. And administration is just some other stuff that they've proven. I think just a little background on the museum first before I talk about the role and what else I've done. The Hudson River Museum is in Yonkers on the banks of the Hudson River, and we're a multidisciplinary museum. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year, so we've been around for a long time. And we're multidisciplinary in that we have art museum, art galleries that are dedicated to 19th century contemporary American art. We also have a planetarium, which is the only public planetarium in Westchester, which is great, and always fun to go for kids of all ages, old and young. And we also have a historic home like Caramoor, although no sound art. Very intriguing, but sound art, not yet, that's true. So we have a 1877 Gilded Age historic home that's, anyway, the home of someone named John Von Trevor, and that was the first home of our museum, and then we expanded to a larger home. So in terms of, I think I sort of talked about my role at the museum. We're a staff of about 25, 27 people, including visitor services and part-time people. I think in terms of how the institution works, like many museums, we have an education department, we have a curatorial department, we have this advancement communications, is in our case, mushed into one department. I think you'll find in a lot of these smaller museums, for sure, probably everybody here can say that you're wearing many different hats keeps it interesting, keeps it lively, but it's often a small staff doing a lot of really big things, which I can certainly say. In terms of my own career, I started off out of undergrad. I had a BA in psychology and just kind of got interested in photography and art, and so my first job was at the International Center of Photography in New York, and that sort of launched a museum career, but I did meander along the way. So I've also worked at art schools like the School of Visual Arts, the New York School of Interior Design, and I also, as kind of another alternative career, working with museums, I worked at a company called Acoustiguide that creates audio tours for museums. So that was a really nice overview of working with so many different museums across the country in size and shape and content and creating them interpretation of their collection or exhibitions. So that's a little bit about me. I'm happy to talk to anybody about all aspects.
So we have our Valley arriving so bad today. I'm from the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival.
Hi everyone. I'm from the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. I'm also here with my colleague Amy, who's the director of marketing. I'm the director of production, so I oversee, well, I guess I'll talk a little bit about the organization first. We are a critically acclaimed professional theater company that performs on the grounds of Boscobel House and Gardens, which is a historic, beautiful property in Garrison. And there we perform in our main stage theater tent from June until September. And then in our winter months, we have a pretty robust education program that visits schools and locations around Westchester, Dutchess, and Fulton County, like the Hudson River Museum. And we run classes and workshops, and we have a touring production of Much Ado About Nothing coming out this spring. And so I'm the director of production, so I oversee lights, scenery, costumes, props, anything on stage, the building of the physical theater tent, actor housing, and sort of all the logistics that go in to all of the things that we do. And Amy's the director of marketing.
Yeah, so I, like other places, wear many hats. So marketing, and I'm actually new to the company. I started in August, but I'm responsible for social media, online marketing, ticket sales, and then also overseeing the experience that you have on site. So like the front of house staff, the concessions, making sure everyone has a wonderful experience when they come to the festival. So every year we hire, for the run of the festival, a marketing intern who helps support me during our busiest time of the year. And also during that time we'll hire an education intern to help with, we have the winter month programming, but then we have a lot of education programming while the festival goes on for the general public.
Yeah. So we have the marketing and education internships, and then we also have a variety of production internships that offer really high quality hands-on experience. Our production interns and the education interns basically run the everyday day operations of the festival. So come visit us, talk to us. We'd love to work with you.
Hi everybody. I will talk for a second about my institution, but I think it's pretty well known as sort of the 800-pound gorilla of museums in this country. The biggest universal encyclopedic museum in the country. I work in the Ancient Near East department, which is always followed up by the question of what does that mean? So that's the pre-Islamic Middle East. I focus on, I got a PhD in 2012 on the images of a Mesopotamian demon from the Middle and Late Bronze Age. So if anybody is looking to pursue graduate work, that's kind of the kinds of topics that you would focus on if you're getting a PhD that leads to a position like the curatorial position. You get a PhD from, I went to the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU, and I focused on a very, very narrow slice. And then you go to a big museum, and you end up, as everyone has said, wearing many hats and being responsible for a much broader span of material. And a curatorial position is also a very hard to pin down kind of thing. A lot of what I do does not have that much to do with research on the day-to-day, although of course it's all underpinned by a basis of scholarship and research in documenting the collection and understanding kind of the larger context for a lot of the objects that are in the collection. We have a little over 7,000 objects in our collection, and we're one of the very small departments at the Met. So there's a lot of work to be done on the curatorial side in terms of just researching and documenting collections. But on the other hand, there's a lot of work that happens that is more public-facing. There's coordinating with education to talk about gallery programs, family programs, lots of different, there's a huge spectrum of programs that happen at a museum like the Met, and those do cover many departments. And kind of the mind-boggling thing about working at a place like the Met is that it is a whole village full of occupations that I never even knew existed before I started working there. So in addition to some of the departments that other people have talked about, like education and marketing and design, there's also, we have an editorial department because we publish a number of publications. We publish exhibition catalogs. We have 2 periodicals, the Met Bulletin and the Met Journal. And that's another part of my job. I sit on the editorial board of the Met Journal, so that also entails reading a wide range of publications from across the discipline of art history and then reviewing them and choosing those that we want to publish. So there's the editorial aspect, which is more scholarly. There is a very robust libraries department. It's actually a huge part of the museum. There are entire back of the house departments of people who make all of the galleries, basically. Carpenters, painters, riggers. The riggers are the people who move the big, heavy things. There's a whole shop of people who make all of the display apparatus, like the cases, the bonnets, the walls, the galleries. Designers who design that, the lighting people. I'm kind of fascinated with the lamping shop, the lighting department, because they are the ones who really make everything come to life, and you see how important all of these aspects are when you see the gallery before it's been lit and after it's been lit. So it's really fascinating to see how all of these different myriad jobs come together to create something that looks very polished from the outside, but is the work of thousands of different people. And we have a staff of about 2,000, so it's a huge place with like a very broad span, which I can only scratch the surface of in short remarks today. But I'll have information, I'll have info sheets about internships. And when I contacted our head of internships, she told me that she'd had really great interns recently from Purchase. So she wants me to come and drum up some more applications from you guys. And I think it's worth mentioning the internship programs are really great. And they involve a wide range of departments, and you can have a really eye-opening experience just being there, and like I said, kind of seeing the whole village and the thousands of different jobs that people do. And it's really helped expand for me the idea of what it could mean to work in the arts. It doesn't only have to be this sort of monastic life of working in a library and doing research on something like the history professor who mentioned earlier.
Less than 20 at an art day. Very, very different. My name is Kristen Lindberg. I am the Associate Curator of Education for Academic Programs here at the Newburgh Museum of Art on the campus of Purchase College. My position is very specific to one kind of museum, which is a university museum. That type of museum has been kind of creating its own identity in recent years. There's now the Association of Academic Museums and Galleries, which has a conference that I attend and speak at yearly. And it's kind of an animal within the world of museums of its own at this point. What I do is the academic programming. So that essentially, it's another umbrella term, which happens a lot at arts organizations. I connect our museum and all of its resources, our exhibitions, programs, all of our staff, our departmental operations with the campus. So
that means many different things depending on who I'm trying to connect with. Because we have such a small staff, each of us kind of ends up running our own operation. So officially, I am the only person serving the campus. Part of my job is not only doing the things I'm supposed to do, but also balancing what we want to do with what we can do. And so there's obviously a divide in there, and so we do the very best that we can. We rely a lot on volunteers. We have a very large docent volunteer program, and they are wonderful, and they're the only reason we can offer tours to local elementary schools. I have an awesome team of student employees, which I will be hiring more for next year, so if you're interested, can talk to anybody interested in something like that at the table afterwards. I work a lot with faculty on campus. I try to create curricular opportunities for classes. I've been working with Professor Westerman a lot on his M+ graduate track that he's doing. I personally have a background academically in academia, but in art personally. So I sort of happened backwards into this role, but it works personally very well for me. I could never decide between academia and art, and so this is kind of actually ended up being a perfect blend. So it's actually very rewarding in most ways. I try to create employment opportunities for students. I run the internship program at the museum. I oversee that, so we try to create as many intern opportunities as we can in the different departments of the museum. So one of our roles on campus, we are an independently running art museum. We were founded as part of the college. Governor Rockefeller actually contacted Roy Neuberger, the namesake of our museum, to donate his collection as part of the founding of Purchase College. So we're very integral to the origins of the college. And we were founded in that way as a teaching museum. So we run independently, and we have a curatorial department, a preparatory department, a registrarial department, development, we have a director's office, we have a business manager, we have PR consultants, we have the education department, which is where I work out of. But all departments are required to open their doors to the school. So although we are a professional institution with our own mission, we show modern and contemporary art, we also allow the students of the college to look through our doors and our walls and see how we actually run. So we can help train, especially for people like Professor Westerman, who are trying to offer some more career skills to students, we can exemplify what those skills could possibly be.
From Storm King Art Center. So I'm just curious to know how many of you have visited Storm King Art Center? Fascinating. I feel like we are small but mighty, so that's wonderful. And also, if you have not visited Storm King Art Center or have not heard of us, please stop by my table because I will be raffling off 2 admission tickets. So admission on us. So we want you to come and see us. So a little bit about myself. I'm Eileen. I'm the HR manager. I certainly feel like I have a different background than many of these wonderful, if I dare call you colleagues at this point behind me. So I'm an HR person. My purpose for being here today is to certainly promote Storm King Art Center and to tell you that we have employment opportunities. We also have internship opportunities. And when I say we're small but mighty, we have about 100 employees when we're open to the public. We have a pretty large or long season. We're open in April, our exhibition opens in early May, and then we start taking our exhibition down, I would say mid-November, but we close the first week of December. So we have a pretty long season. Right now is the most beautiful time of year to see us because Storm King Art Center is an outdoor museum where we exhibit large-scale steel sculptures under open sky across about 500 acres. And very much like many of the organizations here today, we are a traditional museum. We have a curatorial department, education and public programs. We have a full archives and library. We also have a full operations team. We offer private events. So specifically, I'm always looking for enthusiastic visitor services attendants to be here. And so they do everything as far as education, tours. So we have a lot of school groups come and visit us on an annual basis, which We also have some really great, strong school partnerships locally in the Orange County area. And then, of course, last but not least, we have other internship opportunities as well, specifically in our private events department. We do business and tourism groups, so for organizations that are looking to do like a corporate retreat or to do something fun with their staff, they can come and spend a day at Storm King Arts Center. We also do weddings and other high-end private events. And so we are always looking for interns for that. And I'm looking to expand our internship opportunities. So that's another reason why I'm here today. So please come and see me. My table is right outside this door.
Museum or heard of it? Okay, so I'll give a pretty good description. So it's kind of an interesting marriage between a history museum and an art museum, and that the building is historic. It was built the first 1939 World's Fair in Corona Park. And if you haven't been, Corona Park is where they have the U.S. Open and the Mets Stadium. But so the building was then used again for the Second World's Fair in 1965, and they turned it into an art museum in 1972. So we have a lot of exhibits that deal with the World's Fair and New York history, like Tiffany Glass. And probably our most famous exhibit is our panorama, which is a huge scaled model of New York City. It's everyone's favorite. But we also do 2 seasons of contemporary art shows, and we actually just opened our most recent exhibitions beginning in October. I think they're some of my favorite we've done yet on artists from the 80s, Nicholas Mufraj, Pia Camille, and Reed Goldberg, who did the machines. So the museum itself is pretty small. We have about 27 full-time staff and about 40 part-time. Always looking for interns across departments. Education, curatorial, public programming, visitor services. We're always looking for visitor engagement agents who basically engage with the audience in our galleries and make sure that the art is protected during public hours. But generally, so my position, the Andrew W. Mellon Interpretation Research Fellow, it's long, is a new initiative that started about a year and a half ago. It's a 3-year initiative to introduce interpretation to the museum. So you've heard a little bit from your professors about interpretation in museums and what that means. To add to that, it's kind of a 2-pronged approach where it's very heavily focused on audience research. So doing things like surveys and focus groups, talking to colleagues, talking to other museums, getting to know your community, and taking that research to try to make your museum engaging and more relevant and accessible. So because it's a small institution, we all wear many hats, as seems to be normal, and I work between curatorial and education. And so some of the things that I do to help make the museum more engaging and accessible is visitor guides. I write short and easy to read wall labels. I have a lot of things translated into Spanish because so many of our community members only speak Spanish. There's over 130 languages in Queens. We can't have all of those on wall labels, but Spanish is pretty dominant. I also make interactive spaces like our first art lab so people can make and create rather than just read and look, and a bunch of other things. So generally, to talk about, so come to my table if you want to learn any more about the internship opportunities we're hiring right now, but generally they go seasonally and during the summer. Besides that, my own background, I'm actually also a PhD art historian. You don't need a PhD to work in a museum, but you did for this position. But there's generally not. So I've taught at Lehman College if anyone's interested in teaching. I've also worked for lots of art websites like Artsy, doing a lot of writing, freelancing, and yeah, happy to talk about any of that if you have any questions.
Which, if you don't know where that is or haven't been, you should come join us. It's the large building on the other side. And no, I don't know anything about parking. Only within the walls. But the Performing Arts Center on this campus is the largest on a college campus on the East Coast. We run 365 days a year. It's really quite a resource. And usually when I tell people that I'm the director of the Performing Arts Center, the first question that gets asked is, well, what does that mean? And what it means is I'm simultaneously the artistic director and the executive director. So on one side of my brain, I curate our season. So everything that you see that goes up into the public, both the 40 Show Public series and about another 15 for our school bus-in program, that's all curated by me. I do that via a large amount of research. I'm very fortunate here at Purchase to be able to travel anywhere I need to go to see work and to make sure that we're bringing something here that's representative of the quality we expect. And what I'm looking for specifically is to respond to what's going on campus. So I'm always interested in talking to you guys and going into classes and understanding what's going on from a curriculum standpoint with your professors so that I can put things on the stage that help enrich your educational experience by really responding to what's going on, whether it's something that's going on in the classroom or just something that, that the student body wants to talk about. And then also we're front-facing, so we serve a large range of the community. It's hundreds of thousands of guests a year, and those folks really seem to also respond to knowing that there's a connection to the college, that we're creating this sort of lifelong learning continuum at the Performing Arts Center. We do sort of two tracks. When I came, we were strictly what we call a roadhouse in the performing arts, which means, you know, I bring in a show that's fully baked and we put it on the stage and then it leaves. And I didn't think that was the most responsible thing to be doing on a college campus, so I've been slowly converting us to more of a producing house. So we now commission a lot of new work, particularly in dance and jazz, and moving into other areas. We've started to do it in family programming and arts education. So a lot of the stuff you'll see at the Performing Arts Center is being seen here at Purchase for the first time. It was actually created here at Purchase, and that gives us a great opportunity to welcome you into rehearsals and conversations with artists and all sorts of other things that will really open that up. And then on the executive director side of my brain, I am responsible for our budget. We're about a $5.2 million organization. I have a staff of about 22 full-time and over 100 part-time who all report to me. I'm our lead fundraiser and pretty much whatever else needs to happen to lead the organization forward. We have, in terms of opportunities for students, we're one of the largest employers on the campus of students via ushering and the cafe and the box office and stagehand opportunities if you have those skills. In terms of internships, we have a marketing department, we have press, education, interns who work directly with me, production, community engagement, and a whole lot more. So there's really a lot that I can talk to you about in terms of taking advantage there. And very quickly, in terms of how I got here, I grew up in New York City, which I'm finding is becoming rarer and rarer. I went to LaGuardia High School, which is the Fame High School, and I, like my colleague, thought I was going to be an actor. And I went to Marymount Manhattan College to continue to pursue that acting. I wish somebody would have told me that Purchase was a lot cheaper. Within the first month or so, I also realized that I wasn't going to be an actor. That I had the passion for it, but I didn't quite have the talent that I felt that I needed. So I transitioned into directing, and so my BFA is in stage directing. And I did that reasonably successfully for about 3 years out of college, and by reasonably successfully, I mean, you know, I was directing stuff. But I was also bartending and personal training and singing, bartending, and whatever else you could think of to make a buck. And I got to a point where I had this terrible choice. I could direct the cool new play that I wanted to in the Fringe Festival and move back to my parents' basement for the 4th time. Or I could direct Seussical in Omaha for what would have been the 4th time that year. And I thought, these are awful choices. So I decided to go do an MFA also at Brooklyn College in Performing Arts Management. And that's where I found this world of arts management. And so my message becomes, I think you chase your passion and there's a way to stick to it. I wasn't going to be an actor, but now here I am, heavily involved in the arts, experiencing the art every day. I get to artistic direct, which makes me feel creative, and also the fusion of that with my now executive skills has really been a fun journey. So I encourage anyone to talk to me about that.
Decided I didn't want to do that, like some of my colleagues here, and decided to go into arts administration. Since I've been here, I worked at the Public Theater in New York City, Longmore Theater in New Haven, and now currently Westport Country Playhouse in Westport, Connecticut, which is about an hour from here by train, 30 minutes by car. We are actually approaching our 90th anniversary season next year, The Playhouse is an interesting theater because it was actually built in 1835 as a tannery manufacturing hatters leather, so like leather for hats was the original source of the building. And then it was a steam-powered cider mill in 1880. And then it was abandoned, and then in 1931, two really prominent producers from New York decided they wanted to bring theater to the suburbs and transformed our beautiful Red Barn into the theater that it is now. And in its 90-year history, it's actually gone through several different iterations. It used to be a tryout house for Broadway transfers, and then it was part of the New England Straw Hat Circuit, which involved 12 different theaters, which would perform a different show every week for 12 years.
You can take that if you want. Yeah, that's serious.
There's a lot of music students. Right.